Alright, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy 3 Stacks and this thing, baby, representing Team Kings of Games. I'm going to try a different layout for this one. So today I'm going to be updating my SHADDOLL list. I've been a very avid fan of pure 60-card SHADDOLLs ever since the inception of the structure deck. I converted from Prediction Princess SHADDOLLs to pure, and I've enjoyed it, and I haven't really regretted it, and I haven't really changed up on the playstyle, the implemented engines. I've really just upgraded and updated and kind of adapted to the formats as things progress in the game state. And you know, people are just coming at you crazy with all kinds of different combos, all kinds of different like engines, Hungry 5X, Link Cross, Auradon, Verde Anaconda, Dragoon. Just the level of generic applicability is what makes this format so wild card. Wild card being like you really don't know what your opponent's going to come at you with. So I've had to adapt a lot with my SHADDOLL deck, and I've honestly really enjoyed it. It's one of the funnest decks I've ever played. I played it for years, even before the structure deck. Before Construct even came off the ban list, I was still playing dolls. I kind of just like was pretty faithful with them. And honestly, I still to this day think this is one of the best decks that was ever made, like that ever existed. Its ability to play through interruptions, generate a ton of advantage and recursions, constant follow-ups, the ability to floodgate your opponent out the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Constant interruptions, a very control-oriented deck that can combo off when it needs to, but doesn't have to combo off to get the job done. That's a really good comfort zone for me, that I can play mid-range, but that I can combo off when I need to. I can go almost just as ham as a combo player playing like Rock or L-Lich or anything. I can make crazy boards just like them. I think one of the best boards you can make against this meta is Appaloosa Dweller Winda backed up with Schism to go into Op Colone. And obviously El SHADDOLL Fusion to back it up. So you'll have double Winda, negate off Op Colone, negates off Appaloosa, and then, you know, obviously Dweller, or any rank 4 of your choice, to be honest. That's one of the strongest boards you can make, backed up with like hand traps. And to be honest, I don't really go that route with this deck. I normally just set up Cross Sheep with Construct, and I try to loop my Construct, the Fusion. I actually use her to dump all the SHADDOLL spells and traps that I can possibly dump. I'm sorry, my throat's kind of raspy a little. It's a little raspy. But I try to dump as many SHADDOLL spells and traps that I can off of Construct and recur them from my grave to hand. So indirectly, I add as many SHADDOLL cards from my deck to my hand as I can. I just don't search them. I dump them and add them. Like how Salamangreats dump off their Gazelle and add off Sunlight Wolf. I play a very similar way with my SHADDOLLs. My goal when I play this deck is to get Incarnation, El SHADDOLL Fusion, Schism, and Core if I possibly can, and SHADDOLL Fusion. I'm trying to get all the spells and traps, and how I do that is by looping Constructs with my standard combo. So instead of summoning crazy boards, I tend to just set myself up for what I call main phase 3, and what that does is it gives me the ability to play on my opponent's turn, which is my comfort zone, and it allows me to interact better with my opponent so that I don't go blind. With SHADDOLL Core, it also helps because you don't just hop like shotgun Winda when it's not good. Sometimes Grista is better, especially when you play against Dinos, because Grista does negate the summon of you know, Conductor. Sometimes that could be stronger. You know, it just depends. But just giving insight. I'm gonna get into my list. I have it broken down in components of SHADDOLLs, ways to access fusion spells, and then hand traps and tech cards. And as you see, the extra decks here. The side deck, absolutely. I really wish that I had droplets. I feel like droplets is really important in this deck. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the list. I got more explaining to do, but I just wanted to share that with you guys. I do play mid-range. Even though I can combo off, doesn't mean I will. So let's go ahead and get started with the SHADDOLL monsters themselves. I'm just going to keep these piles here separately. So for the SHADDOLL monsters, well, this is not a SHADDOLL monster, but it's an honorary one. I played 3 copies of Mathematician. This card is the best starter in the deck. Honestly, you can play Spirit of the Fallwind because she does search any doll. She adds to your count, and you only have 3 normal summons that like do something in this deck. I either normal Mathman or like sometimes I hard draw Edge Chain, and I normally just to link off to search Patchwork to get a poly. But oftentimes Mathman's kind of like your only normal summon starter, so you could honestly play more normal summons. I just opt for a higher SHADDOLL count and more light attributes and more fusion spells because those are your best hands. That's how you can push through a Borreload Savage, an Arc Light, you know, a Charles. You can push through that when you have those crazy hands where you have multiple fusion spells, multiple SHADDOLLs, and light attribute access. That's like, it's the most insane hand that you could draw with this deck, and it pushes through a lot of interrupts, a lot of negates. Mathman contributes to every single one of those focal points. He can add your dolls, so that's why he's counted in my doll count, because he dumps Hedgehog, Windy, or Squamata on command and gets me whatever I need. And also at the same time, he can dump the clown so I can get a light attribute. The reason why he can access my fusion spells is because he does dump Squamata, and Squamata can send a Shaddoll fusion, which means if I can just fuse off into a Winda, bare minimum, with the bad hand and link her into a gravity controller, I can still get access to my Shaddoll fusion with weird hands where I have no light attributes, a bunch of Dark Dolls, and like one Poly and a Math Man. You can turn weird hands into very playable hands. You just, honestly, it comes with experience. That's what I really would say. So Math Man is just, he fills every gap. He's the best starter. He does so many things. He has so many tricks up his sleeve. An incredible card. And he's an Earth, which is really important because sometimes you need to summon Shikinaga. And then I play the One Foolish Burial. This adds to the Shaddoll count. It's just as flexible as Math Man minus the body. So this is a little bit stronger sometimes because Math Man can be like Veilered, for example, or Imperned, but like Foolish is just Foolish. You either Ash it or you Gamma what you send. So it's a little bit safer, but it's not as plus worthy as Math Man. But these do virtually the same thing. Math Man can send virtually any monster you need, as well as Foolish. So you kind of just have these for the utility, and they fill in any hole that you need in the fill. So if you're missing a light, you get the light. If you're missing a doll, you get the doll, if you get what I'm saying. For getting access to the fusion spells and the traps, you need some kind of rotation for a fusion outlet to do so, and you'll be using these to dump Squamata to dump any spell trap you need. So even if the worst case scenario, you could just summon Winda, you could still link her off in Gravity Controller and fetch the incarnation you dumped off Math Man, or you know what I'm saying? I do that sometimes. I have to finagle a little bit with my hand and get it to be in the composition that I need it to be in. But moving forward for the rest of the dolls, so we play 3 copies of Squamata. So Squamata, to me, I know people hype up Windy, but to be honest, Squamata is still and always will be the best main deck Shaddoll. It does exactly what Construct does when she's special summoned, and it doesn't get any better than that. He has the most utility out of every Shaddoll because he does what every Shaddoll does. Literally, he's just like Windy can't do what every Shaddoll does because she special summons him, which means you need another way to get them to the grave. The same thing with Hedgehog, he searches them, but you need another way to get them to the grave. Squamata on command gets you any effect you can think of that has doll written in its name. It doesn't get any better than that. This also just dumps fusion spells and traps, and you can recur them off your fusion monsters. So Squamata has the most potent utility. I am not a Shaddoll player that actually fusions into Construct just to dump a Squamata. To me, that's kind of pointless because I like to look at it like Thunder and Orcus, where you only have 3 to 4 good activations. Like Falco's okay, but your best activations are going to be Squamata, Windy, and Hedgehog, and like somewhat Beast, but really it's like Squamata, Windy, Hedgehog, and Aerial to combo with Windy. So like when you're burning Construct just to send Squamata, you're missing out on a potential plus-worthy play where you could trigger both Squamata and Construct and get multiple dumps instead of dumping a dumper. That doesn't make sense. That's like using Squamata to send Hedgehog to use Hedgehog to search Windy, when you can literally just send Squamata to send Windy. You know what I'm saying? So some Shaddoll players kind of do stuff that kind of is cringeworthy sometimes. But honestly, like I said, Shaddoll is like, Squamata is like the best one. Literally, it doesn't get any better than Squamata for the main deck. Next up, I play obviously triple Windy. So it's really important to open the best names. I know some people are very adamant on low doll counts. I am not that kind of Shaddoll player. I'm a different breed in Shaddoll. I feel that the best way to play this deck is to open multiple Shaddoll monsters, or at least if you don't have multiple, then you need 1 Shaddoll and a light attribute. And if you don't have 1 Shaddoll and a light attribute, you need literally a dark and a Squamata so that you can summon so you can summon Winda, use Squamata to dump fusion, and link Gravity Controller to search your Shaddoll fusion. That's how you do it with bad hands. But for me, the best hands are when you draw multiple dolls and multiple fusion spells. That's how you break the strongest boards. You can crack through Appalusas, Warlord Savages, Arclights, Gearfrieds, Dryden pop off of Charles, punishments off of the Dragma matchup, Fleur de Lis. You can play through so much when you have multiple ways to fuse. And that's, for me, that's how I play. That's how I've gotten so much success. But I think people, you need to explore more. Don't just like stick to the one mindset that everybody has of, oh, drawing Shaddolls is bad, drawing too many fusion spells is bad. You need to draw a multiple of each if you want to play going second at all. And if you want to combo off going first to set up any kind of compromisable board that's not win to pass, you're going to need multiple fusion outlets sometimes to do that. And it comes also with the names. So, of course, I'm maxing out on the best ones. I'm also playing 3 copies of Hedgehog. Because Hedgehog... So the way I see these 9, as I explain in my profiles, is I see these 9 in the terms of fusion summoning and the utility that they allow me to, like, they allow me to allocate pretty much any SHADDOLL monster I want. So I look at them almost as the same thing face value. In the terms of interactions, of course, they get you the card in a different way, but the way I'll explain it is they get you the card nonetheless, if that makes sense. So yeah, it happens in a different way. This might search it, this might special it, this might dump it, but they will get you the card, if that makes sense to you. So when I see Mathman and I see these 9 dolls and I see this Foolish, I like to look at this as 13 extra copies of any doll that I need. That's a lot of utility. That's a high level of consistency when you are playing like me. I'm kind of crazy. I play 60 card decks, but I make it work. So don't judge it. You know, I play 60, but I'm telling you, I get them dubs, man. I clap them cheeks with these 60 card decks. Continuing on with one of the weaker names, but it's definitely still good because it allows you to place itself, is Beast. So honestly, the best SHADDOLLs to fusion with are the ones that are going to replace themselves so that you could keep fusing off. Because if you can only fusion summon one time in this deck, it's going to have to be Wind to Pass. Or you're going to have to go into Construct or Op Cologne, link them off, and get some kind of value. So you want to be able to fusion summon multiple times, and using cards like Beast and the bottom 9 below him are going to be really good because they allow you to not only fuse with them, but they give you more materials and fodders to keep fusing off, which is really good. And Beast draw effect is really good, honestly, it is. Especially triggering it turn 1 off of Incarnation. If you've ever like side decked into like your droplets or you're a pointer of the Red Lotus and you just want to draw into it, flipping Beast turn 1 to draw 2 is a really good start. So next up, honestly, people might give me some cringe or might think that I'm incorrect for playing 3 Aerial. I've never stopped playing 3 Aerial. I've always thought this card is insane, not just because it's a triple DD Crow, but what I do. If you guys watch me playing dolls, you might just be inspired to play like multiple Aerials. How I'm using this card is I'm actually banishing my own fusion monsters off of Aerial. Like when I have Constructs and Opcolonnes and Windas and Shikinaga Engrave, I will banish a couple of them or one of them off Aerial so that now whenever I use Aerial again, I can just bring them back and get them on the field pretty much for free. It's almost like bringing them back from the grave, but instead I just banish them and bring them back that way. So Aerial becomes an engine in itself, if that makes sense, where it plays into itself. One Aerial sets you up for another Aerial is the best way to explain it. And how I'll do it sometimes in the grind is I'll just flip Incarnation to summon a Windy. Windy gets attacked. Windy goes into Falco. Falco goes into Aerial from grave. Aerial goes into a fusion that I banished off of his effect in the first place. So I set myself up a lot with my Aerial. So I plan ahead with it. I like to strategize with it a lot more. So Aerial is definitely, it can become the best SHADDOLL once you set it up correctly. It has almost more utility than any other SHADDOLL in the deck because it starts to just special summon Construct. Literally, that's what its text starts to state. It just starts to says, when this card's flip summon, special summon Construct, because you'll be banishing your Constructs with your Aerial. I know the turn 1 combo you already set up with Incarnation, just its graveyard effect, banish Construct, flip Aerial, but I do that more than once in a duel. Like, I'm always ready to grind, and I'm also ready to OTK, but I keep follow-ups in mind when I play this deck. Even if I see Access Code Talker written on the wall, I might just do Wind as my 5th summon to play around Nibiru. I might still search El SHADDOLL Fusion and recur it. I might still grab Incarnation from grave and Shizone, even though I'm going for game, because just in case I don't have game, you know? That's why I like to use Aerial too. I might not get the opportunity to ever flip him and go into Construct. The game might end faster than that, but I'm ready in case it does come up. So it's the strategizing, it's the planning ahead. I really love 3 Aerial, you guys. It's such a great card. It's a different name for Opcolonne, which is really important. Opcolonne is one of the best cards for this deck going second because you get a permanent negate that you chain block under. Next up, I'm playing Double Dragon. I think Dragon is really powerful. It also has synergy since I'm on a budget and I don't play Access Code. It has synergy with Unchained Abomination where you dump it off Construct to pop your opponent's spell or trap or your spell or trap because you could always target El SHADDOLL Fusion, then chain it. It still gets destroyed, it just resolves. And you get to pop one of your opponent's cards off Abomination. So this has synergy if you're on a budget like me, where it turns Construct into like a double-edged sword. And don't sleep on Dragon, it's really good. And even going second, if you need to use your Incarnation or your SHADDOLL Hound, which I do play, because it's so good, I think that people sleep on this card way too hardcore. It's way too good to not play, in my opinion. You can just set your Dragon off of a Windy or just setting it in any way, shape, or form you can and flip summoning it. And this card is a bounce. It's it's a way to get past protection cards like Dingirsu and things of that nature. So like it's a really good card. All in all, both its effects are great. Bouncing and popping, there's nothing bad about it. It's 1900 beat stick. Dragon's really strong. With Hound, he adds SHADDOLL cards from graveyard to hand. He gives me a level of recursion that I have in the terms of my fusion monsters, but I don't have in the terms of getting my fusion monsters back, if that makes sense. And recycling my fusion monsters is almost just as important as using my fusion monsters to recycle fusion spells, because fusion spells are only as good as the extra deck targets that you have to resolve them, if that makes sense. So with Hound, not only is he recurring SHADDOLL cards from graveyard, but also he's another way to flip your SHADDOLL monsters that you set the same turn. You're bypassing the mechanic of a flip effect deck where you normally have to set them and wait. You're flipping them the same turn you set. Hound does that, and sometimes you can do it without burning Incarnation's graveyard effect from the trap, so you get double flips. You can sometimes get access to Falco and Resolve Windy, and you're just comboing off a lot, and Hound's just really good for that. Even just in the hindsight, when you have a SHADDOLL Fusion engrave and your opponent shuffled your window with Unicorn, and you just got this off of Windy and they attack into it, you flip it, you add the SHADDOLL Fusion from your graveyard that you would have got if they didn't Unicorn the window, but you know, it happens. For the remaining SHADDOLLs, these are probably the most high yield one-ofs. For what they offer to the deck, obviously the one Falco. Falco is like, honestly, Falco is similar to Ariel in the sense that it becomes as good as every SHADDOLL is because it gets you access to every SHADDOLL once you get them in rotation. Once you've resolved the Construct or two and you've got a lot of good names in rotation, Falco becomes like just Monster Reborn for anything, and that is almost as good as Windy. It's just summoning from grave instead of deck, if that makes sense. The fact that he's a tuner is an added bonus. You can play Jet Synchron and Hulk. I just didn't deviate from my roots. I kept it pure, I kept it honorable, and I like how I play dolls. I really do like how I play this deck. Falco's amazing, and recurring him off of Incarnation is not a bad thing because he flips and he goes into Construct. Construct dies, she gets our Incarnation. There's a lot of ways you could survive getting OTK'd with his deck, and sometimes all you need is a turn because SHADDOLL Fusion is just that busted of a card, and you have so many ways to access it. I do play the one of Kaios. I think this card is very slept on as well. It's a light attribute that's searchable. If you don't play it, you lose that bit of utility and consistency to getting into your Construct, and Construct is the name of the game because Construct gets you access to your entire SHADDOLL outlet. It gets you access to any SHADDOLL card that you need, and if it's a spell or trap, it's literally going to add it from your graveyard to your hand after it sends it. So it doesn't get any better than that in the terms of just getting your spells and traps online. That is the SHADDOLL lineup. As you see, it's very heavy. Some people might knock that, but don't knock it. I'm breaking 6 negate boards with this. I have a video coming up where I broke a 5 negate board. 5 negates is not hard. I mean, it's not easy to break through, but I'm breaking through it with just literally, and it sounds crazy. If you guys don't believe me, you don't have to. Just watch the video. Just fusion spells and SHADDOLLs. That's it. I mean, sometimes there's a gamma involved, but honestly, just activating fusion spells and chain blocking with graveyard effects gets so far bypassing negations because chain blocking is really good, and this deck does it so effectively. So now I'm going to show up the next portion of the deck that's almost as equally as important as the SHADDOLLs themselves. Is going to be the fusion spells and the ways to access them. So what I'm playing here is I'm actually playing 3 copies of Lunalight Black Sheeps. Black Sheep searches Poly, and what I like about it is that it has an added value that it's both a fusion spell and also a fusion material. Very similar to the Patchwork engine that I play, that Chain does not only search Patchwork, which gives me Poly, which is a fusion spell, but he's a dark to go into Winda. And that added value of that added layer of utility is a lot better than King of the Swamps. It's a lot better than Fusion Sage or any other method that would search Poly outside of what I play. They have dual utility, and I like multi-purpose cards that don't just do one thing. Alistair is great, but for me, Mapman is always going to be stronger than Alistair because he's so multi-purpose, where Alistair is very limited in what he can do for you, especially when you want a fusion from your actual field. So next up, we played 3 copies of Recycling Plant. This is one of your weaker ways to access Poly, but what I love about it is that it adds Poly from your graveyard to your hand when you will run out of Polys with this deck. And also, it lets you recycle anything you fusion with. So when you fusion with your extra deck monsters, be it a fusion, be it a link monster, be it an XYZ, this puts them back into your extra deck. So this is like a baby pot of avarice during each end phase, yours and your opponent's respectively. This is going to help you to easily outgrind some of the best decks. You already have a high level of recursion, but just using Plant to add to that surplus of recursion and having constant follow-ups every turn, being able to grab a poly. It's really strong. It's protected by Gamma when you have Gamma, so it's pretty safe play. And also going second, it's normally going to bait and negate because that's a discard for cost. And with this deck, you just need like 2 or 3 cards to go off, so it's worth it to throw a card just to bait. And one of the best interactions with this is discarding Edge of Chain for cost, because when you discard Chain for cost and your opponent hand traps this, Chain does trigger because he sent from the hand to the grave, and then he searches Patchwork. So your opponent has to have 2 hand traps just to stop you from making that play. So if they have 2 hand traps, you go 2 for 2, break even. And if you have a poly, you have a Patchwork in hand, you have an SHADDOLL fusion, whatever you have, you can just follow up with that. And it's really safe with Gamma. So next up, we're playing 3 Patchwork. As you can see, I have not deviated from Patchwork. I've played it ever since I built the deck with the new structure deck. This was my spice. I know some people kind of jocked it. Nobody really gave me credit. I didn't feel like it, but it's okay. I'm not really an avid fan of people kind of acting like, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. But I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there because I used to really be that person. I'll be like, man, look, give me my credit. But anyways, I'm not going to go there. So Patchwork is really strong in this deck. It's a +1 inherently. It's a self-replacing engine. It gets you a fusion spell and a fusion material. So it's very dual utility. It's a great multi-purpose card, and it's a good bait for negates and hand traps because this card does not give your opponent any information on what you're playing outside of it being a fusion deck, which means they want to negate your fusion spells. This is why this deck's so good with baiting negates, because just activating fusion spells, it already baits negates. Because unfortunately, if they let the fusion spell resolve, it's going to be very hard to negate stuff after that because of the chain blocking. So all 9 of these cards might not be a fusion spell, but they equally have the potential of getting a fusion spell. Also being multi-purpose. This being a fusion outlet and a fusion spell in itself. This being a fusion outlet and a fusion spell and a self-replacing engine. And also being a +1. This being a fusion outlet and a level of recursion that you need for your grind to recycle your construct, recycle your fusion monsters. All these do more than one thing. Whereas poly, it just does exactly what you want it to do. And as you guys can see, I'm testing out fusion substitute over the 3rd poly. I do like that it has that added benefit. The graveyard effect is pretty nice. It does let you recycle your fusions. It does let you draw a card. It only can fuse from field. That's why I was very, very on the fence about it. But it's not going to be that bad when you still have 2 actual polys to work with all their ways to search it. This is just one of those like higher yield ones that can get you more advantage. And I'm just testing it. If it comes up to the point where I draw fusion sub and it's the only fusion outlet I have, and it could have been the 3rd poly, I'm going to cut it and go back to the 3rd poly, to be honest. But testing is worth it just to see how far it can get you. You have 12 ways to fuse before you get into the SHADDOLL names. We're playing... honestly, SHADDOLL Fusion is like one of the strongest cards like in the game. Like in the terms of the fusion mechanic, I don't think there's like anything that is on this level, unless it's like maybe Void Imagination. I don't know. It's because it's just literally this card is a foolish burial for any monster. You have to really think about that because the SHADDOLLs require a monster with a different attribute. So you can send any earth monster, any fire monster, any wind monster, any water monster, any light monster, any dark monster. That's all 6 attributes. So if you think about it, if you played every SHADDOLL fusion monster, not saying you should or that it's viable, but just the fact that that potential is there, that you can foolish burial literally any monster in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's really powerful. The fact that they hit SHADDOLL fusion and not this card was like strange to me, but because this deck's so rogue and under the radar, they're not going to touch SHADDOLLs. And I'm going to continue playing my 3 extra copies of Foolish Burial. Like, that's how you... I look at my cards in a different light from people, I think. I see this card as a Foolish Burial. I can put Overtext Koalas and search for a Pill and a Conductor. I can put an Orcus Nightmare and I can summon Winda and go Orcus combo. I can dump Jet Synchron and go into a Hawkeye Fibrax combo. You know, I can go on with the potential that this card has. It's really, really good. Like, it's extremely powerful. I can even dump Eldritch the Golden Lord off of this to summon Construct, and then just send Speller Trap off of his effect, and then summon him as a 38,500 beat stick. Sending Eldritch the Golden... You get the potential of this card, but I'm not going to lie, you guys, to be honest, my favorite in the terms of versatility, flexibility, and the ability to also maneuver and navigate through negations And the reactive aspect of it is going to be L. You can chain it to anti-spells, D-barriers. Back in the day when people were playing like the Sea Monster, Retaliancy, I think it makes you like banish all your cards. You can chain this to negators. You know, you can use this on your opponent's turn. This is one of your best pieces of disruption for summoning cards like Winda, Construct, Opcolone, Shikinaga, Grista. I play all of those, and all of those are really good against the decks that they respectively can interact with. So SHADDOLL Fusion is just really broken, you guys. All it says is just Fusion Summon, but that quick play is what makes it so versatile. So just comparing it to SHADDOLL Fusion has a higher damage output, and it just, for me, it's more powerful. But like when it comes to the level of versatility, SHADDOLL Fusion is always going to be better. And then I am going to show the traps, and I'm going to go to the hand traps. I play double Incarnation. I think it's correct to play multiples. You use one for your standard combo, and the other one, you just grind with it. You keep adding it back off your fusions. I love to loop Construct with it. That's one of my best plays that I like to do. I just summon Construct off this, use her effect to Sin, get an effect, and then whenever I fuse with her or she hits the grave, I just add this back. And you could just keep grinding with your opponent. It's like Ultrageist with Manifestation and Siliquidus. You just get a Monster Reborn that's recurable, except this one's stronger because summoning Construct is always going to be better than Siliquidus because Construct can do like 10, 11 different things, but all Silk does is bounce. And then we have the one SHADDOLL Schism. This card's really good. It's really good. It plays around Call by the Grave as well because if your opponent targets something, you can chain to fuse. So once this is up, it will start to play around things. And another thing too is when you want an effect like Opcolone to resolve and your opponent activates Droplets or Gamma or, you know, Ogre. Gamma probably not so much, but Imperm, Ghost Ogre, or Droplets, anything like that, you can actually use Schism if you read it. I'll go ahead and read it to you. The fusion summoning, I'm just going to skip ahead. And basically, you can fusion summon by banishing the materials from your field to your grave. So I know about the graveyard effect, that's what most people do, but the field effect is also really, really versatile in the terms of dodging cards like destruction-esque effects and things of that nature. Even if it's just a Dragoon and he's trying to pop, you just fuse off into a window and it doesn't get destroyed. You take a lot less damage and you probably survive that game. That turn. And then I play the Core. Core is just way too strong to not play. It lets me summon Grista without using fires. And it's really a self-replacing card. You want to dump it off. Sometimes your opponent negates the activation of your SHADDOLL Fusion, and you just end up using Squamata or Mathman or Foolish, anything that gets Squamata to dump this, and then add that SHADDOLL Fusion back, and because they negated the activation, you can activate it again. For the hand traps, I do play 3 Nibiru's, 3 Ghost Ogres, and the best hand trap to play in this deck because it's so versatile is Gamma and the Driver. These are the best hand traps in this deck for synergy because they're light attributes. They're better than Ash and Imperm. Gamma's just insane. Activating Plant, activating Patchwork, activating SHADDOLL Fusion. All those cards scream hand trap, scream negate, and Gamma's a really good follow-up to push through those interruptions, especially against Abyss Dweller, which is a really annoying thorn in my side. And then Ghost Ogre just against Infernobles and against certain decks like combo decks is pretty decent. These don't have to end a turn, but it's the fact that they're hand traps that I can combo with. And instead of playing Veilers, since Gamma already negated monster effects, I wanted a different level of utility, so I chose Ghost Ogres. So that way I'd have a way to interact with monster effects. I have Ghost Ogre, which can also interact with spells and traps, and it does kill Isolde, which is really nice. And Nibiru, being just Nibiru, you know, it's the rock. Sure, these can all be played around or through. I'm not too concerned about my opponent not being able to combo off at all. I'm just concerned about Dweller and a Buster Lock. If I have access to my extra deck and I can actually fusion summon and get graveyard effects, I'm not really too scared. You guys will see me breaking in for Noble Knight boards, like, without even side decking, because this deck is that good. And then for the last cards, they're the text cards. I play 2 Edgem Chains for the Patchwork so that you actually can resolve it. And this card, if this card had 1,000 attack, it'd be busted, and I'd be playing All Mirage, and I'd be playing 3 of this, because you could just normal this, link it into All Mirage, and then get a +1 on legs. Really a +2, because you get a body and then 2 cards in hand, so you go to, like, it's crazy. I wish this had 1,000 attack. That would just change how good this card is if it had 200 less attack, but it's still busted. It's still a great card. The Clowns are really good, too. They just give you more fodder. It makes the OTKs and the pushing a lot easier, and extending into multiple constructs a lot easier. For the extra deck, I do play the Link 2 construct. You gotta put some respect on her. She's really strong. I summon her over Appaloosa a lot of the times, over Dweller sometimes, and When the meta calls for it, when the matchup calls for it, I won't summon her. I'll go into those cards. But summoning her as an extension to my plays to get that one extra dump. Because like I said, what I do with this deck is I actually try to get access to all of these. This is my game plan when I play this deck. I want any number of, like, 2 of any of these 4 minimum. If I could have the best of both worlds and this is Burger King and I can have it my way, then I'll have all 4 of them. But if I have to pick between 2 out of the 4, I always go for L and Inkar. And then third priority Schism. I know people think Schism is just like you go to it, but I've been playing Shaddolls a long time, and these cards get you a lot further. This also is very conducive with Construct, being able to get you more materials when you don't have them for L to be live, disrupting your opponent's grave, sending aerials, sending Windy to extend a bit more for your follow-ups, special Hedgehog, so when Hedgehog gets flipped, you add Shaddoll Fusion. This just has a lot more potential for benefiting me, whereas Schism is more than likely just used to hurt my opponent. But this can both hurt my opponent and help me, so this is my priority, and L is first priority, because I want to be able to chain L to any effect that specials, put up a window, and if they out the window, you know, you have Schism. If they out the window the second time, you flip Incarnation, and basically they have to have 3 outs the window. If I get my way and I go uninterrupted, or I just play through, like, it's pretty easy to play through Valor when you have L, because they just Valor incarnate the construct and you chain L. But if I have it my way, I will have L, Schism, and Incarnation. Core if I can. I don't always get it. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But the name of the game for me is get the Shaddoll spells and traps, set them, and pass. And if I have to combo off, I will. But these cards are what's going to help you to do that a lot more consistently. This card indirectly says add any Shaddoll spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Add any Shaddoll monster from your deck to your hand. Add any Shaddoll card. Literally, it's that busted. Yes, it kills card. Yes, it recurs. But it's also the entire deck in itself in just one card. It does all that. And I play double Op Colognes. I think it's correct to play 2. You will be using the second one a lot, especially with Schism now. Just having extra materials to fuse off, so Schism that you can just keep popping off. This card is like bread and butter. It's almost just as good as Construct. These are the cards that help my that hurt my opponent but don't help me. Being the Winda, the Grista, and the Shikinaga. Yeah, these can pitch cards like Windy to get free pluses, but they're honestly here to stop. Conductor. This card is actually really slept on. That's why I think Shaddoll players are sleeping on this, because this negates Pendulum summons, the whole Pendulum summon, which is way more broken than Winda, because they could just pin 5 and attack over Winda and main phase 2 combo off completely through a Winda. And I actually respect Pendulums and Dinos enough that where I feel Grista is worth playing. Shikinaga is just a monster negate. You need some kind of negate that's not like Op Colognes targeting a card. You need to be able to like hit things and just get rid of them. So like Opalus is good, but Shikinaga does negate and destroy, which sometimes is better, but Opal just hits any monster. So as you guys see, I play 10 dolls. And this sometimes I still end up needing to recycle them, because I pop off a lot with this deck. The Gravity Controller for the utility. Same with Cross Sheep, it's for the utility, and I actually leave it on my field. You guys might think I'm crazy for not linking it off, but whenever I use this on my first turn, I normally just leave it there. So on my opponent's turn, I use Incarnation. That's why I said I prioritize Incarnation. I just play differently. You guys will see, I just play differently from normal Shaddoll players. And I'll flip Summon Construct to Cross Sheep Zone to trigger it a second time, because I like to juice my cards, get as much as I can get out of them. And then I get Construct, Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, Cross Sheep, and then I get to Swarm more, and I get just a bigger board on my opponent's turn. I get a main phase 3. So this card, don't link off with it if you don't have to, because it will reward you for using it the second time. That might just get you the game. And then we play Selene. Selene is just so good in this deck. You'd use it to get easier ways into access code, so it makes Shaddoll Fusion OTK, but a lot easier. Shaddoll Fusion is already a OTK by itself, but this makes it to where you can have more monsters and still use this to go into Access Code Talker. And also, it does summon Op Colognes on your opponent's turn during their main phase, and that's really good for disruptions. This also makes it to where your opponent will have to have 4 outs to win this, because they can out it 2 times, and you'll flip Incarnation, they'll out it the 3rd time, and then you can still bring it back off Selene, which is really broken that you could do that because it is a spellcaster, so they have to have 4 outs to Winda. And nobody really can out 4 Windas. I've never seen it. And Abomination is like my poor man's access code talker. It's the poor man's access code. And then I play Dweller, because you just have to play Dweller. It's just so good. Cards that I would consider playing if I had them when that card comes out, the Magistus cards are really good. And I would definitely play their Link 1, because it turns any spellcaster into a light attribute. that level of utility is just like really absurd, because now Mathman is extremely plus worthy. So I can't wait for the Magic's discards. Even if I only end up playing like 6 in the main and then one of their Link 1, it's just going to change the game for this deck. It's going to make 3-card combos become 2-card combos, essentially. And that's really, really strong. So as you guys can see, that's my list. Hopefully you guys learned. Whenever I do SHADDOLL content or any decks that I care about a lot, you guys should normally learn a lot, because I do give a lot of insight. And it's all from experience. It's not just mumbling my mouth just to talk. If that was the case, I wouldn't even need to make the video. I could just go talk to my wife. But I'm going to go ahead and end the video with a prayer, and I'll be out. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Jesus, thy kingdom come, and thy will be done on earth just as it is in heaven. Please give us this day our daily bread, Lord, and please forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, Father, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the glory, and the power forever. In the mighty name of Jesus I pray. Thank you, Father. Hallelujah. Amen. All right, you guys. Peace.